Okay, I'm Steve Corns. I'm the project manager for the electric bus project in Nottingham. I know many people here, and I'm not so much talking about fast charging because Dan's asked me to recap on our whole project. So that's what I'm going to try and do, try and tell you where we got where we are today, how we achieved the finance, one of the most difficult things in the current climate, and how we built up our fleet to be currently the biggest one anyway in the UK. So just a bit of background on Nottingham City. I mean, these are the sorts of numbers of people we're talking about. There's a million people within the travel to work area, 500,000 conurbation residents, and 300,000 within the city boundary itself. We're a unitary authority, so we're in charge of highways and public transport, and we've always been very pro public transport. So, and the background to the actual public transport itself, everyone knows it's a deregulated market. That left some holes in the services over the years, and 90% of departures were commercials. So these holes were plugged with a local link network set up by my boss, which does about 7 million journeys per annum now, and on quite a few routes, and you'll see a map of that later. So that gave us, and also as a city council, we are a fleet owner, so we had 60 vehicles, so that put us in a good position to have a business case to buying vehicles. So there we go. The local link network there. We have there's a Medi link, there's a work link, there's a shop link, there's an event link. So they're just not all of them running all the time. For instance, the event link, it runs the cricket ground or football grounds, etc. And then our role in that, the City Council role, obviously the concessionary travel scheme, which is costing us a lot of money, and a lot of people didn't understand that for a bit, at £9 million at the moment. And the stuff in bold, there is the stuff that pertains to my project. So we're doing contracted bus services, £2.8 million, and we set up a statutory quality partnership scheme in 2010 with the first one in the country, I think, which had an escalating emissions scale. It started off at Euro 3, and also we've got a multi-operator ticket. So why did we choose to go electric? Well, originally I was brought in and I worked on the ethanol. We got a couple of ethanol buses. They were great, it was all running, but unfortunately with the tax breaks on ethanol fuel by the government, you couldn't actually buy ethanol in this country, which involved me importing it. It was made from wood waste, but then the food fuel debate happened, and that sort of didn't help biofuels or ethanol much. So those, in fact, last year were converted back to diesel, which was a sad day. But so we own 60 vehicles, you know, and they were getting old. We still got a few old ones which I'd like to replace. And I have to say the biggest factor there in us is the Green Bus Fund. And without that, I don't think anyone could afford to introduce this new technology. We're also doubly lucky in Nottingham that we have the rather controversial workplace parking levy. So that's basically, for those of you who don't know, it's a tax on workplaces, parking, which is I think it started around about £260 and it's something like £378 a year per workspace. Now all that's ring-fenced. It's ring-fenced funding to go back into transport projects. So that's funded the tram, it's funded the electric bus project and various other bits and pieces. Also, we won a bid for a better bus area bid for around about 11–12 million pounds, and that could have meant the removal of BSOG or the devolution of BSOG away from the operators back to us. It hasn't quite happened like that. So the LCEB incentive of 6p a kilometre for a low carbon emission bus was something we were looking at as well. And obviously with our SQPS, we wanted to be seen to be reducing emissions, and then we all know about the fuel security debate that happened a while ago, and we're still looking at. There's the environmental policies and the NOx stuff and the client earth cases and all the legislation to it, we're not seeming to get to at the moment, which we want to be part of as well. The other strength we have as a city council is I think we're one of the most sustainable city councils in the fact that we generate our own energy from waste. So we do have an energy supply, although I haven't successfully managed to incorporate it into charging the buses as of yet for various reasons. And the other thing we had was property. That became a major problem I noticed when I was trying to build the charging bases is the rentals, because even we have park and ride sites in the city council that even our own property departments wanted to charge me huge amounts of rent for the land they had available. So I was really confined to the park and rides. Now so going back there, you know, the cost savings element of that. This is what my boss sort of roughly put together. This was you know, when we were looking into the cost savings. Now these are a few years old now, and it's looking at an Optare size bus. So basically, we if you look here, the payback we were looking at was about 4 years. I mean, obviously it depends on the mileage, and it's round about that now. And then 8.7 years we've got there. I'd probably go lower than that now with no grant. So with a vehicle life of 12, 15 years, you're getting payback on these electric vehicles. If in those days you were brave enough to put one into place, which obviously a lot of the operators were resistant of because of reliability and the fact it's a very new product. So then we had the implementation stages of the project. So I mean, one of the things when I started doing was to develop the network of chargers. So here we were looking at the number of buses we needed for the contracted services. As you can see, these are the link bus services. And this is what we started with, 4 buses here. Actually, these were run by Trent Barton until about a month or so ago, until a few weeks ago. And that's now moved to all these buses are now operated by Community Transport, who successfully bid for those services. Now, with the first 4, I turned up at Trent Barton to have a look at their board, their distribution board, and luckily there was power. It's not something you normally find in a bus station distribution board. They're normally absolutely full. So I put in 4 trickle chargers and a rapid charger there to get that project moving. And then I went to Community Transport to try and do the same thing, but they just didn't have the power. So we upgraded the supply. Luckily it was out on the street, and we've now got 10 trickle charge points. These are just 3-phase points and 2 rapid chargers in that one depot. The Medilinks, I'll show you how we bought the buses, because basically we bought 4 and then 4 and then 17 and then 20, or 20 and then 17. So suddenly after 3 years we suddenly had an enormous amount of buses. So to be prepared for that, I had to build a big charging base. So we built one. It's got a 440 kVA substation, 3 rapid chargers and 24. It can trickle charge 24 buses. So that was the first one. I mean, I've just and then around the city I've put 7 rapid chargers in total. So that's 5 at Community Transport, 3 at the base I'm talking about here, which is basically the Medilink base, and then 1 at a bus station, 1 at Manvers Street, the Trent Barton depot, which I'll have to move soon. This map's in a funny place really, but gives you an example. All the green routes, these are the local link routes, and these are what we've electrified. So those green routes, they're virtually all electric now. And the last city, the park and rides moving from here and round here, they'll be fully electric in January. So the BYD buses for that project are arriving, and we're testing them out on the Centrelink, where we just need a peak vehicle requirement of 3. So we're testing those out, and they'll be good to go. So at the moment, this is actually the big base, the first big base I built on that side, that's actually that side. There's 3 lanes there and charging there. That's a charging pillar there, and there's a charging pillar. I'm not sure if that's one, but there's 2 cables come over to do 2 lanes there, and that does that one. And then there's 3 rapid chargers down there. This is actually an extension to that base that was done a year ago, and it was quite technical because there are all these trees here. So this is cellular confinement to protect the tree roots. That's the substation build for this original site. So at the moment we're standing at a £15.1 million project, phase 1 and 2, as I said, which equates to Green Bus funds basically. So you could say Green Bus Fund 1 and 2. We got 4 vehicles in each of those. And then phase 3, which I had to have this station ready for, charging base ready for, 20 vehicles, and then 17 for Green Bus Fund 4. And I'd like to say at this point, all these vehicles were optaires. When Green Bus Fund started, there was no options, which was, there was no real competition in terms of electric vehicles. And I could go on the internet and I could find lots of electric vehicles, but they're all Chinese and you could never find them here at all, and mainly, or Solaris. And they just weren't available. And then we had a bit more competition turning up in my last bid, so won by BYD. That phase of the project is going in now. I've built a big base for that. I've got a little picture on one of these slides to show you, which actually, funnily enough, can only charge 12 BYDs, and their huge battery capacity means that it takes a substation twice as big as that one to charge 24 or rapid charge the optaires, because their batteries are 95 kilowatt hours. Our new BYDs are 345. So there's a lot of differences in weight and range. And the phase 6, which is my LEBS bid, no more vehicles, unfortunately, for Nottingham in this tranche of the bidding. So I've got around about £1 million to put more infrastructure in around the city, which is actually how I financed the BYD charging. And that's what I've just constructed here. This is for these are the BYD chargers. These are actually the rapid chargers on the original compound. So the feedback now about the project, well, to be honest, originally these buses turned up and they should have been able to fast charge. The first buses I got, well, I took them to a fast charger, plugged them in, absolutely nothing happened. The protocols didn't work with anything existing. So we had to form then a collaboration, which I was pushing very heavily myself, trying to find a charger manufacturer who'd work with a vehicle manufacturer, which took about 3 goes. And then we worked with APT, which make these, and we changed some aspects of the charger. And Derek will probably tell you from York, will probably tell you about when you don't change some of the aspects of the charger, what might possibly happen. Basically, what we had to do, if that's a car, for instance, it would charge for 20 minutes off that. There's no problem for that bit of equipment to do that. A bus wants 2 hours of that, and the car requests full bore. It requests full 50 kilowatts. So you can imagine you've got a bus requests 50 kilowatts for 2 hours. Well, the manufacturers of that equipment said to me that was their destruction test. So they weren't prepared to warranty that equipment. So then I had to get this collaboration together, and Control, who make those chargers, were very, very helpful, and we re-engineered part of that charger to give a pulse profile. I can't remember exactly what the profile, but it's something like 5 minutes full power, 1 or 2 minutes 50% power. It's of that order. Obviously it dropped our charging rate, which I wasn't happy about, but we got a warranty on the chargers, and because we'd fallen at that point when they because they just knocked all the rates down, and we were getting about 0.5% a minute, which really wasn't worth having, and now we're close to 1. But one thing that has been flagged up last year, in the beginning of this year, because we hadn't seen it in the 3 or 4 years, it was cold last year and hadn't been cold in winter. And we saw it the other day. Temperature is having an impact. And unfortunately, I see Colin's presentation and he can go into all this technical data, and I really wish I could, but I'm writing tenders, bringing in money, being chased around by operators and trying to basically do everything. So and I've got scientific background. I really would like to be looking into this temperature impact. Other impacts. Oh yeah, and the importance of an independent operational base when you're tendering out contracts is essential. And when I spoke in Brussels, a lot of the operators there, they understood that because of the risk, the financial risk of an operator taking on building something like this. For 5 years, for a 5-year contract, it just isn't viable. So the fact that we can build that and provide the vehicles, so the operator just basically gives us drivers, that's a great way forward. And I think that's another reason why we've been successful. It's these combinations of factors. We own our own fleet, we have a workplace parking levy, and we took it on ourselves to build everything and then put that on the tendered contracts. Obviously, many of you will be familiar with these. You don't just drive electric buses especially our early ones, like you do a normal bus. You don't just chuck them out for 400 miles, fill them up with diesel. You have to think about, normally we were putting a rapid charge in during the day to make those work. And then what you see is driver training so important. I saw it with our original operator and our community transport operators. Completely different energy consumption because of the use or lack of use of regenerative braking, which I can see on our new VeriCity telemetry. It's on the Optare buses. It's putting 870 kilowatts back in. I mean, it's enormous amounts of energy that you can recover. And so we try to tell our drivers, you shouldn't be braking. You should not be braking. Within reason. Battery range, as I said, that's been affected by temperature. I really need to start looking at it. We initially had problems with reliability of vehicles, and like I said, I think this was linked with the fast launch into the market of vehicles in this country when there weren't many. And quickly, this is just some data looking at the energy consumption we're getting. Now these are the BYD, the big vehicles, and these are the Optares. So 1 kilowatt hour, these are per mile, not kilometres figures. VeriCity gave me per mile. I had to revise everything else I had last night. But basically, yeah, these are good figures, better than we originally thought, because we always say 1 kilowatt a kilometre. You can see that's a lot better than that. The BYDs obviously are heavier and they're doing a longer range. But that computes in terms of cost. So I did some rough calculations, what's happening with cost. Now that was the diesel hedge price for community transport last year. And so for a mile, we're assuming a 10 mile per gallon bus, these are the assumptions down here, and a BSOG rate of 35 pence per litre on diesel. So if you go through these figures, they're using half a litre a mile, one of these diesel buses. It's costing about 45 pence. Take off the grant, it's costing you about 27 pence a mile. So then we get the Solo EV. I've put the fuel cost in at 12 pence a kilowatt hour, which, you can probably get cheaper, but I've just averaged out. So that's with your LCEB grant, which is 6 pence a kilometre, so I'd put that as 9 pence a mile. Your cost per mile there is 3 pence. So that's a saving of 24 pence a mile over the diesel. And then the BYD, same electricity price obviously. This is the consumption, 1.65 kilowatts per hour per mile off that data from VeriCity yesterday that I dragged off. So our cost there taken off 11 pence a mile, it's 16p a mile cheaper. And then now, this is what I'm interested in, off-peak electricity tariff. I've got 6.9 pence off a contract I negotiated. So these are the costs I'm getting. So basically, we actually go into the negative here. With the grant taken off that, I don't know if you can actually do that, I don't claim the grants. But yeah, so the costs are very effective there. in terms of the BYD, it's costing 3 pence a mile. I could just, and the perception of these vehicles is great. You know, the people like them, they see them. The drivers love them because of the lack of vibration. I've had drivers thanking me, older drivers thanking me that you know that they're not being shaken to pieces when they're driving. Then people know they're low emissions. We've branded them very well. You might have been looking at some of the branding. I did have some templates, but there's no time to show them. And that's important, branding. Engaging bus operators, that's not been easy at all, I have to say, not been easy at all. But community transport, our favourite operator operating our vehicles, are absolutely fantastic, and they put a lot of effort and a lot of time in, and I liaise with them all the time, you know, constantly, and I'm happy with that. That partnership is fantastic. That's what made it work, and that's given us, you know, a political. You know, especially now, all of a sudden, we were doing this on our own a few years ago, and everyone was trying to go, oh, we're not sure what's going to happen, keep it over there. But now everyone's quite keen on it, so we're hoping to unlock some more money. And in terms of the future, well, we wanted to go for an single electric solution. Obviously, Nottingham City Transport are going for the gas option. We're a Go Ultra Low city, and that will bring in more charging and more support for cars. And obviously, as part of the low emission zone, in 2020, every bus entering the city as part of the SQPS has to be Euro 6. 2018, I think they've got to be Euro 5. Sorry, I'll rush through that, but any questions if there's time?
We'll take questions at the end.
Yeah, okay, well, thank you very much.